All right, in this video, I'm gonna get real on mental health. Getting real. What's working, what's not working, trends, where things are going, what can we do differently, and maybe, what's on the frontier, the new horizon for specifically mental health in looking at mental health a different way. The efficacy of mental health treatment has not been great. And throughout time, there have been different ways, some very bizarre, that we have looked at mental health and what to do about it. I'm going to tell you some of them, and they're going to sound outrageous, right? And in this time right now, they're going to sound crazy, but it's true. When these things happened, we could look at Trephination, where this is a long time ago, but still there were a bunch of smart people and scientists and people that were working in mental health at that time who said, this is a good idea, let's do this. Trephination, drilling a part of the skull away with the hopes that you'll remove the mental health problem in addition to removing part of the skull and the contents of what's in the skull at that moment. Trephination. Next thing is bloodletting. Bloodletting. So the thought was, well, bad blood. Maybe there's something in the blood. That's the problem. So if we remove some of the blood, and everything from leeches to a whole bunch of other stuff, but bloodletting, it's all in the blood. Okay, so that moved into insulin shock therapy. So insulin shock therapy is you basically give somebody a bunch of insulin, their blood sugar level drops, they get hypoglycemic to the point where they can lose consciousness, and this happened quite a bit. They lose consciousness with the hope that, hey, maybe we're resetting something by doing this. You could also kill people, and I think the mortality rate from what I read in some of these studies was between 1 and 10%, depending on what study you looked at, but there was that. Then you look at asylum or isolationistic methods, which is essentially these people aren't conforming to society's norms. These people are a risk. So you know what? Let's isolate them. Let's put them in an asylum. Let's get them out of here. Take them away. Put them somewhere else. And obviously, socialization and social interaction and the ability to have pride in oneself and potentially at least work or do something to your utmost ability and with the hope that you're expanding your ability is a big part of being human, and it's also a big part of treatment. And the fact that we're not doing that by isolating them or sticking them in an asylum or in some movies stick them on an island somewhere, that obviously didn't work. Then you get to lobotomy. Lobotomy, you cut out the connections between the prefrontal cortical area and the frontal lobe, which means you're cutting out part of the brain. And somebody won a Nobel Prize for this. I think it was like 1949. They won a Nobel Prize for this. Cut out part of the brain. Obviously, that kind of left us as well. That didn't seem to be the right thing. After lobotomy, now you're looking at things like ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, that still lives to this day in a much different way than in the movies like Requiem for a Dream or some of those other movies that feel very 1950s, outdated, movies that look at ECT as this really, really scary thing. But the concept was it's all electrical. Everything is electrical. The problem is electrical. And if we can reset the electrical nature of somebody, maybe the mental health stuff will go away and these mental health problems will disappear. I leave it up to you to decide whether that could work or not. But ECT does live to this day, and there are some studies on ECT that they look good. They look decent. Let's just call it decent or okay. After ECT, or during the time of ECT, we also got a lot of psychoanalysis work. And the concept of psychoanalysis is it's in the childhood. We need to get deep into the unconscious. There's some kind of unconscious trauma or unconscious event or some childhood, everything from an attachment problem or a problem that was never processed and that lack of processing causes someone to habituate to certain conditioning or a certain way of living or a certain way of viewing themselves in the world or a certain way of seeing the world as this scary place or this limiting place or this traumatic place. And that's where the fear comes from, the anxiety, the depression, whatever the symptoms are that come from that. Okay, so then we hit the Prozac revolution, the SSRI revolution. That's all about neurochemistry. And so the concept is this is a biological problem. It's a neurochemical problem. This problem exists, and we have to shift, we have to alter, we have to change, transform one's neurochemistry. And by changing the biological nature of an individual neurochemically, you will thus change the behavior and maybe change the mindset of that individual by changing the neurochemistry. Jury's still out on that. You know, some studies look at pharmacology and pharmacotherapy and certain measures that move beyond the placebo effect. Some are equivalent to the placebo effect. The data hasn't been amazing. The efficacy hasn't been that great, but there's been some studies that show obviously some improvement. That's why the FDA approves and puts it out on the market. But the reality is it hasn't been that great. Now you look at technological advancements. You look at all the neuroimaging that we're doing to try to get some sense of what's going on, the PET scanning, the fMRIs. But you look at what's going on with technology, alpha stimulation, transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, different types of TMS, neuronavigation, more research into pharmacology and psychopharmacology and different compounds that might come out. There's a whole slew of things, and I remember in my psychiatric training, so I'm a humanistic psychiatrist, I got double boarded in addiction medicine, I'm a physician, and I've worked in academia, I've published in research, I founded and then operated my own highly successful mental health center, treatment center, where we incorporated everything from energy medicine, psychopharmacology, Chinese medicine, from acupuncture to body work, to creativity, to existentialism, to a lot of really cool stuff. And I've been in the trenches in this world, so I've seen a lot of what works and what doesn't work. And the integration is really what we need to get things to work. And I'm always looking at what's on the frontier. And one element of what's on the frontier, in my opinion, should be energy medicine and looking at ourselves as human beings, not as biological creatures with neurochemistry, although that is important, not just looking at our childhood or our psychological limitations or traumas or attachment, although that's very important, but also looking at the fact that we're human. We have an existential need to have more meaning in our lives, to have connection, to be able to see ourselves within the big context of the world around us. We have a collective energy and we have an individual energy and originality that comes from our soul. It's a soulful expression. And we need our creativity, and we need to be able to expand our creative vision to see beyond our current circumstances, no matter what your circumstances are, whether there are limitations in socioeconomics, or there's been prejudice or racism or sexism or whatever it is. That's our environment, but we can move beyond our environment and our present circumstances by being able to expand our vision. And that starts with being able to envision it ourselves creatively. And that's why I promote creativity and creative prowess and awareness so much, because you need that as a first step before you can move towards something like that.